80 years ago this week was D-Day, so World War II seems appropriate. During World War II in the United States, there was Jim Crow. And in the South, we had captured both German, Italian. In Europe, we captured the people we were fighting with and Japanese. And prisoner war camps were stated throughout the South. German POWs were able to walk around without any problems, whereas African Americans were living under Jim Crow. So, African American leaders came up with something called the Double V: victory against fascism abroad and victory against fascism at home. And that led towards, in 1947, Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier. 1948, President Truman decided that having an integrated military, desegregating our military was an imperative, and he did so. And our first conflict with a desegregated military was in 1950 to 1953. It's called the Korean War, where African Americans and white Americans and Asian Americans and all Americans fought against North Korea and China. In 1954, Brown versus the Board of Education occurred, and it stated simply that separate but equal was neither. And that changed how things were going to go for African Americans. That is the beginning of the end of Jim Crow. You have the Montgomery bus strike, and for those of you who know the name Rosa Parks, that's where it comes from. And you have a man named Martin Luther King who becomes the focal point of this movement. Dr. King was an intelligent, respectful, beautiful man that turned the other cheek at the absolute horrible behavior that white racists had in the South towards African Americans. And slowly, through working together and peaceful protest, African Americans were able to finally achieve some of their goals. In 1959 and 1960, we saw African Americans doing sit-ins in places like Woolworths. The Greensboro Four are your primary example. JFK gets elected over Dick Nixon in 1960 and begins to work with Martin Luther King. In 63, in November, JFK is killed. Lyndon Baines Johnson becomes president. And that is integral for the success of America, because he gets the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act, the ones in 64 and 65 signed, because Lyndon Baines Johnson had been in Congress forever and everyone owed him favors. He was able to get a tremendous amount of legislation done because of that. Now, he was a Democrat, and the racists that had been supporting Jim Crow in the South now no longer had a party. So in 1968, Dick Nixon launched what he called the Southern Strategy to incorporate racists into the Republican Party, and that's how we have the party today. Please remember that racism is a choice, and we need to talk about it. We need to talk about it openly, and we need to talk about it with each other so that it does not continue. Ruby Freeman had to be escorted by federal officers, and there had to be National Guardsmen there so she could be integrated into school after Brown versus the Board of Education. Race is our original sin. In August of 1619, the first African slaves were delivered to Virginia. It's an issue in our society. We need to talk about it. Please vote for people who support public education.